hello, welcome to this Boardroom Talk series. Hello, good evening and welcome to this Boardroom Talk series. To this series of Mentor My Board, that is the second series of Boardroom Talks. And in this series, in last series, we had almost 42 talks with eminent personalities across boardrooms, compliance professionals, CEOs, managing directors, independent directors. And during that entire series, we realized that it is so important to know the best practices of the boardrooms. And we all learn from these good practices. And that is how, again, we have started this second series. And this series is live on YouTube every Friday at 6:30 p.m. At the same time, it is available on MentorMyBoard as well. Platform of MentorMyBoard. Let me share something about MentorMyBoard. So MentorMyBoard is a governance tech platform, which is a B2B2C governance tech platform, I call it. And we are on a mission to build a community of 1 lakh directors. The platform has various features like one-on-one mentoring, group mentoring sessions, courses on the platform. It's e-learning marketplace for boardrooms. So which has a complete ecosystem what we are creating for directors. And Voom as a program, if I talk about it, it was the program which was launched by Honorable Finance Minister of India for us in last Women Directors Conclave. And the batches of the program or the certification program are already on. First batch is on and second batch is going to be starting from 20th. And now let me talk about Boardroom Talk series with you all. Now, Boardroom Talk is something wherein we invite people from the industry who have seen governance very closely, who have been living the governance day in, day out in their corporate life, career, and in various roles and capacities. And that is the opportunity where we get to know a lot of best practices from these eminent speakers. Also sharing about their journey, how they have been looking at the corporate India, how they have created the mark in their journeys. And again, very specifically, we talk of good governance practices. And that is where we have today Rajashri Sai with us. And welcome, Rajashri. Welcome, Bharti. And before I hand over to Bharti, our moderator, let me introduce Bharti. So Bharti is a governance compliance professional, senior vice president, Star Health Insurance, and also, most importantly, advisor and a strong support to MentorMyBoard team. So thank you, Bharti, for being here with us always and leading these boardroom talks for us and making them very, very interesting. So I hand over to you for further introduction of Sai and further discussion. And lastly, I'm going to ask one question at the end. Thank you. So over to you, Bharti.
Thank you so much, Divya. It's always been a pleasure. And this is, as you said, the second of the flagship series of the Boardroom Talks. We are very privileged to have with us Rajashri Sai, who is right now the entrepreneur of Impactree, which in itself is such a wonderful name, Not only does it create an impact, but it goes deep down and creates roots and spreads out its branches and twigs and wings. So, I found that name was so good because you are into ESG and saving the environment is also including saving the trees and the forests and all the ecosystems dependent on that. So it's a wonderful name. Going on about Rajashri, she is the founder of Impactree Data Technologies and Zuppa Geo-Navigation. Impactree is a technology company that works at aligning the vision of social enterprises and enabling the scale-up of grassroots initiatives by working with real-time social data amongst the last-mile communities. Through Impactree data analytics platform, Prabhaav, Impactree involves communities in the collection and ownership of social data thereby helping build programs through a bottoms-up approach to scale. On 4th October 2022, Impactree was selected as one of the 10 enterprises to be felicitated by the Gujarat government in the presence of Honorable President of India, Shri Draupadi Murmu, as top 10 enterprises led by women transforming India. In May 2022, Impactree was one of the 8 startups selected to attend the World Economic Forum 2022 as part of the Tamil Nadu government delegation. Wow. In October 2022, Rajashri Sai was covered as part of the 75 women entrepreneurs selected by Niti Aayog and AIMS to be covered on the 75th anniversary of India independence in a book titled Women Entrepreneurs of India. Currently, Impactree has helped implement programs in 10 states, impacting over 500,000 people and has over 80% repeat customers. Through intelligent data insights, through empirical evidence provided by Prabhaav partners, they have experienced 30% year-on-year growth and scale intervention 3x times. Impactree has also supported a number of grassroots level initiatives implemented by not-for-profit organizations and corporates and institutions such as General Electric, HSBC, Franklin Templeton, and Viva Global, Dalian Foundation, and including UNICEF, USAID, Sakal, Digitain, etc. She has also started a journey as a young student who is interested in environment and social development, and in 2011, selected as a fellow participant in Jagriti Yatra, a fellowship program, post which she has left her corporate career to pursue the social entrepreneurship dream to positively impact 1 million people in her lifetime. She is an independent director of Autoline, a listed company which is based in Pune. Professional experience as a lawyer and a member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, she has a unique experience in the development sector, which allows her to collate lesson insights from both for-profit and not-for-profit organizations and successfully scale programs in rural India across sectors such as entrepreneurship, skills development, capacity building of youth, clean energy, and education in a transparent manner. Hunger Collective is one of more initiative, which we will let Rajashri explain a little more about later, which was started during the pandemic. She and her team have been instrumental in putting together the Hunger Collective technology, enabling marketplace platforms which track and authenticate the demand for food, rations, and medicines and matches it with NGOs. So basically logistics supply chain. Very good. Government institutions, foundations, and HNIs who can supply. Currently, Hunger Collective has reached supplies to over 250,000 families across 10 locations in India and has been instrumental in sending over 10,000 plus migrants back home to Tamil Nadu. So rather than reading all about it, it will be such a great pleasure to hear it from the woman herself. And first off, hats off to all your achievements and being, honored by in the presence of the President of India, who herself is such a amazing woman of great caliber. So thank you, Rajashri, for joining us today. So a brief background of yourself in the corporate governance journey with special, reference to Impactree and Hunger Collective.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Bharati, for the introduction. So like I said, I'm a company secretary and a lawyer, but of course, it's almost in another life because being a serial entrepreneur much longer. Zuppa Geo Navigation was my first company. We successfully raised multiple rounds of funding, so handled the whole seed, VC ecosystem, the banking financial ecosystem we have. And currently, we are strategically invested by another listed company. I am no more active as a role in Zuppa, where we build electronic control systems for drones, and we have our own Indian drone also, which we supply to military and civilian applications. So after having scaled Zuppa, I largely went back to my passion because I've been an activist and a socialist much longer. And by socialist, I mean a social developmental worker much longer. Really across the country, it was initiated when I was in college and I worked with Dr. Aruna Roy very closely with the RTI movement and the Manrega movement, campaigned in Parliament Street, walked across the country and really went to understanding how India thought. And that's the whole
So that's not very
experience.
far away. So that's not very far away. So I
Yes.
would like to hear, like, when were you in college, and when did you participate in youth activism? How did you get into the activism itself, the mindset? Because most youth are all, I'm sorry to say this, but it's all about, how soon can I get my degree and go and settle in the States? So I'm amazed, and I respect you for the fact that you wanted to do some good in here, and you have done a significant amount. So can I get the specs on that, please? I'm sure all our viewers also interested.
So my journey began, in my case, I grew up abroad. So, I've had a varied experience where I literally changed 12 schools in 14 years of schooling. So went all across the GCC and stayed across the GCC. And I think that experience really got me to a point that when I came into India, I really wanted to be the change I wanted to see. And that's when the journey of activism started and being a change maker started. So of course, I walked across, I worked on civic rights, environmental rights, but somewhere around 2008 or 9, I started seeing that activism was not really leading to a lasting change I wanted to see on the ground. And that's when I took a step back, went into the corporate career, I did my CS, I did my LLB, I did my MBA from Corico, IIM Code. And along the way, of course, I was, heading I was a part of an executive council of a listed entity. And after working for about 2, 3 years, and this I tell most people, I'm a recession entrepreneur. What essentially happened, recession came in, and unfortunately, you don't have much of job being in the legal counsel when you are a company which is in the infrastructure segment and going through recession, right? So at that point of time was a pivotal moment for me when I decided that, I really wanted to do something else. And that's when Jagriti Yatra happened. I was selected as 450 entrepreneurs across the world to go on a train journey across India, and you go and meet, the Jagriti Yatra is presently also open for applications. I went and met people like Narayan Murthy, then the founder of, Fab India. A lot along the way that I went along the yatra, it cemented my belief that I could really work as an entrepreneur. At that point of time, I was already working in the developmental ecosystem. I was, working with organizations on bridge education programs, etc. So using this knowledge is when, we started as a family, first gen entrepreneurs together. We started Zuppa geo navigation systems. At that point of time, of course, because of the recession, our family was in the steel business and we took a big hit in the first recession. So, my brother won the IIT Tech Fest in 9th standard, and we took his winning design and started a trading company. We went on to scale it. And then incidentally from there has been a point where we have not stopped. We've, gone on to build our own technologies, to fly it to the defense, and presently we're scaling it. So 2000, that was a very pivotal moment in my life where, really my experience on the ground and my understanding of how to run boards, which I really learned through my legal education and working in a listed company, came together to shape Zuppa. And along the way, there was this niggling thing that I wanted to go back to the social sector and do
So
something.
I'll stop you right there. So the corporate governance journey as a lawyer and a company secretary showed you, gave you insights into how a board functions. What are the people who are independent directors? What are they interested on the corporate side? Where do they look into from the point of ESG specifically? So some insights, you don't need to name the companies as such, but because of your experience as a general counsel, as well as a company secretary, can you tell, not only in the listed company, in other than the listed company, what did you feel that the board was interested in? What were they conscious about before the pandemic and during the pandemic and post-pandemic? How did it make a difference with regard to the ESG quotient?
That ESG is principally what we work as a sustained tech company a lot in Impactree.ai. And our mission is to actually build technology platforms that empower boards and corporates, but also we work with non-for-profits and social enterprises to write the S in the ESG extensively. Now we are moving it up across the E and the G. And how it really worked is when we started working a lot with banking financial companies. We used to work, typically in doing impact assessments, and now we have a platform for continued tracking for corporates for their social developmental programs. We work with for 80 plus clients across the country, and working with them through this platform, we started realizing that CSR and ESG, as long as it remains to be a compliance check box, it'll just be ticked. When boards right now, when BRSR started coming in before COVID, when CSR was already being implemented, most of the corporates and the board started asking, can we in some way start aligning CSR and BSSR verticals into our core businesses? That started with a trend with a lot of, like, I'm sure Star Health Insurance also was at some point thinking of that and possibly are doing programs in that end. But a lot of the BFSI companies started thinking, largely banking and financial companies, that can be aligned. And that's where we saw an opportunity to go beyond compliance, because this is what we tell a lot of our clients, right? When they start off on the ESG journey, everyone feels, hey, this is okay for Europe. It's too alien for India. Boards often end up saying, are we at that point that we can track? But we've realized that working after with a lot of companies, Indian companies do a lot of compliance, right? We do ISO, we do industrial laws, we do labor laws, we do environmental laws. BRSR is nothing but an integration framework of all these compliances that companies are already doing, that they're already tracking. It's a framework which allows you to align what you're already doing, look at it a little differently, and see, can it help you build your company in a more robust manner in the future? So when we started working with banking companies, and how we work with them is that we initially started helping them align their CSR to a core work that they do. So when they are serving communities through loans, through microfinance, we allowed them, or insurance products, we started seeing whether we could really work with the social work and CSR that they started doing to help those communities. So for example, if you're lending into communities in Madhya Pradesh, you work with the same communities. When it comes to the healthcare, through preventive healthcare camps, you work with them through cattle loans. To when you're actually funding cattle, you work with them on enterprise, which actually helps you move the ticket or the needle for them to repay. Because we've realized through our big data.
Rajashri, sorry to interrupt you, but I do understand what you all were doing, but from the point of view of the viewers, who are themselves budding, technologists, and they are also professionals who want to lead from the front in corporate governance. What do you suggest would be a good, starting point where, they can look into how can they up the company's ESG quotient? Like you said, CSR activity can be built into the thing. So if your business is into banking or NBFC, so your business is in lending and also getting deposits. You weave it into the DNA of the company, the CSR activity, you weave it into the DNA. So it's not something a CSR for the sake of CSR, but you're doing your business, which is lending and deposits. And in the course of that, you're doing it also for rural insurance, economically backward, and you're able to establish the fact that you are actually upping the quotient. So in that context, how does a board become conscious of that? Of course, the boards all over the place are very conscious of that right now, especially after the pandemic. But in a family-run company which is recovering from COVID, okay, so it's an MSCB company, for example, or it's a family-run company, mid to slightly higher than that to scale, and they are recovering from COVID. How do I don't want to shift now to ESG full time, because right now I'm looking into funding. How do you feel that Impactree and yourself, not because of the objective, how do you feel that the quotient sensitivity of ESG can be upped in the boards of the companies, of the people who are all directors or aspiring directors of MentorMyBoard? So how do you feel that a company like Impactree can increase the sensitivity to ESG quotient in the boardrooms?
Yes, so I think that we can do it in two ways, and we're already doing it in that way. Like what I told you was an example, is where we identified a core issue with the customers that they had, and then the CSR program helped solve that to increase their portfolio, and communities did better. But say you're in a manufacturing setup and you have nothing to do with BFSI, or you're just recovering from COVID, like you said. ESG, like I've already told you, is already existing compliances. So the first time that you actually ask someone, or even you yourself, forget the pillars of ESG, and we can help you in identifying that. You actually do an audit of it yourself in a short term. You will start understanding that it is nothing but what your core business metrics that you're already tracking. Right? In environmental, it can be heat, it can be exchanges, it can be environmental emissions, it can be power usage. For a lot of manufacturing companies, for example, power is there over 8 to 10% of their overheads. And currently there is, because of the expansion that's happening, the power rates are also fluctuating. So some of these investments can actually in the long term reduce your cost structure. So the one way of you to look at the ESG across could be actually to reduce cost structures. 2 is, of course, CSR, but G also, when you look at it from the governance perspective, in terms of diversity and inclusion, a lot of diversity and inclusion that your initiatives that you can undertake can actually drive better businesses. Like when we work with the retail associations of India and then work with some of their related NGOs, we realized that when they hired from diversity segments, customers experience 95% satisfaction in actually being able to, go back in terms of repeat for their stores. So even the retail segment, which is currently recovering, a lot of them are using the G or the diversity of governance in very differently to try seeing how they can drive their businesses. So this is what we tell most of our boards. Don't look at ESG as compliance. See if you can reduce costs somewhere. See if you can increase profitability somewhere. And see whether you can actually look at the ESG plan that you envision, not for today, but for the next 2 or 3 years, because it's a long run. It's not a one-stop do right. Will actually help you to fundraise, because going to the World Economic Forum and knowing that US is also going through a recessionary market, incidentally, a lot of the funds which are coming in today into the country are from European and South American and South Asian markets.
Absolutely.
And these markets take ESG very seriously to the extent that in Europe and Scandinavian countries, even products that go from India have to be written in a particular way. People even will not buy a product if they think that it has been wrongly sourced, it's not vegan, or it's been animal tested. So many things that are there which can actually affect your brand. And all it takes today is one random person posting it on social media and it can become viral. So I think that that's why it makes so core sense that you look at ESG from either of these 3 lenses, do a system audit inside to understand. And it can be a very simple framework. You could have objectives, you could have activities, you could track against it, and you can have basic outcomes that you want to achieve against that. If you're able to track this, you'll be able to understand how to go forward.
I totally get this. And actually, it has triggered so many thoughts from how you feel like a company like MentorMyBoard, not a company basically, because this is a tech platform like Divya introduced, which is B2B2C. So there are businesses also where the mentoring of boards is going on, and there are directors also who are on MentorMyBoard and who may want to, be sensitized to this. So how do you feel the role of MentorMyBoard can be enhanced? How MentorMyBoard can, sort of increase the visibility of what is ESG in the governance, okay? And how you feel that a tech platform, because you are from a tech platform yourself, so how do you feel that we can bring this about, increasing the sensitivity and for amongst our own community and further develop it?
I think, like I said earlier, we have to look at it at adding value. And that's where I think MentorMyBoard can actually communicate largely through tech, right? Tech is an enabler. It can enable scale. It can enable transparency. When we, how organizations are using our platform to measure ESG, they're getting more transparent. They're able to track. Now, what MentorMyBoard does is it actually educates people a lot more on what is happening and how do you actually react to better governance and how do you build better governance structures. So I think there's a natural synergy that we can actually establish where we can definitely, and we are already in discussions with Divya to see how we can actually offer this to, boards, both in terms of training and skilling, but also in terms of concrete solutions that they can implement within their organization so that they can be built more robust. And I think that's the best part, that tech will allow you to do it at a scale, but at the inherent, it is also through partnerships that we can forge and offer that will allow us to actually get to that scale very fast.
Like I was saying, technology also helps in, as you said, reducing the costs. And also in a way that, see, the thing of carbon credits was not there so much, in between there was a hiatus. Earlier on in early 2000s, the sustainability reporting in every balance sheet that had come. Yeah, sustainable
developmental goals.
Yeah, that is the sustainable development goals which have brought up through the government. But earlier, very early on, sustainability report used to have to be reported in the annual reports of companies. Now, the carbon credits is more for manufacturing companies. So, and then that got phased out. Now it's again making this thing back. So, how do you feel that the sensitization to these things by use of technology, because MMB is a tech platform, your own company is using tech in a very high way, because tech also it is large scale economies with less cost, so economies of scale also can be achieved. So the board is also happy, the investors are happy, you get better profits, you get technologies, but how does it actually translate into specifics? So with one or two examples which you have done work of recent times, you don't need to name the company, or if you're comfortable, you can name the company also. If you can just give us some background.
Yes, so the example I was giving you is the BFSI company. We're already working with them. Through our big data platform, we were able to quickly map that everyone is one health expense away from actually defaulting on their loans. And that's why the CSR program was designed to actually eliminate that risk as such, and that way they've been able to reduce default rate by 10% in communities they serve. It's actually increased by almost double the amount of loans tickets they've been able to give through their enterprise programs in those communities they work with. Similarly, we're working with an OEM service provider. We work also very well across the Saudi ecosystem, other than India. And there, what we've been doing is where we've been looking at their whole problem around attrition and processes, where they really need to look at Saudiization as a mandate. Most of the Saudi companies today have to have 50% or people more who are from Saudi locals who have to be employed into their ecosystems and cannot be migrant workers. And hence, they have a lot of attrition. So a lot of the systems and process changes that we did the initial audit around ESG with them, and we've been able to change their system and processes within working at the capacity, because the core mission for Impactree is we work on building the human capability of people within these ecosystems, specifically focusing on their decision-making ability and how do we help them enhance. It is through tracking that you can enhance the decision-making. And that way, we've been able to help the site workers as well as the project managers in these sites by reducing the project management cost by almost 34%. And that has directly allowed them to expand into new business verticals like construction and new verticals that they're expanding today too. So there we did an initial audit across ESG segment, and we identified, of course, that what are some of the short-term priority areas, medium-term priority areas, and long-term priority areas. And from that, we've been able to help the organization through the data that comes to our platform to really also see the data, take better decisions at various levels, but also through that increase transparency and in the decision making across the whole board, so that they're able to really understand, are they going on the right track? And so, I think that's what we see to be crucial going forward.
Yeah, just 1 minute. The board does not have access to the whole gamut of what exactly is happening, because generally boards meet once in a quarter. So ESG committees are usually headed by independent directors. Does the technology platform have a dashboard where somebody can actually track from outside,
Exactly.
what is the actual happening, especially in these long-term solutions? You really want to know whether it's happening or we are just giving a lot of gyan. That is also so for the persons who have invested into this ESG initiative. So would this, the company which you are helping or the other earlier company also which you helped, would they be in a position to show this to the board?
Yes, so then they have dashboards that we are helping them build. So see, before you build a dashboard, the first thing is knowing what you want to track. Because I think without sorting matrices, a dashboard can be done by any software today, right? It's not very hard. But the question is what you have to track on the core becomes very important for you to be able to dashboard. And the board does see the dashboard because that's all they need to see on a regular basis. Even now, if you look at the compliance, impact assessment is also mandatory for certain sector of companies which are doing CSR. So third-party audits are already happening. The Social Stock Exchange and the ICAI framework has been defined what should organizations track in terms of impact. So there are third-party organizations that can always play a role in validating this data that goes in, but I think that that is an annual function where they validate the data. And on a quarterly basis, the boards or the independent director can see using these platforms, where is it that they are across these pillars. It will throw up a scorecard to them, and that way they will know, are they heading in the right direction? And as far as independent validation goes, yes, I'm sure organizations like Impactree, MentorMyBoard, and the other ecosystem partners are well suited to actually also help these channel partners on the validation, so that we understand that once a year, are we headed in the right direction? Is this the data that's actually coming in?
That's good. On the societal part of ESG, any initiatives that you have taken, not only with Impactree, other than Impactree? Would you
So
like to
we've
talk
worked,
about that?
so like I said, on the diversity and inclusion, we've worked extensively. We in fact had an internal, we are partnered also with HUB there to actually do something called the sustainability dialogues, where we bring in people from diverse ecosystems to work with corporate players to understand D&I. And this is where what we've really realized is that diversity and inclusion is, most people are very good in planning it out, but, or visioning it out. Planning for diversity and inclusion is a different thing altogether, because it is easy to hire workforce which are differently abled, but having internal systems, whether it is incremental systems where you're able to track performance of those who are differently abled, mentor buddy inclusivity system, or even infrastructure. Do we even have gender inclusive toilets in our country, right? We had them before, right? It was very simple. In the same, cubicle, you would have a urinal and you would have a regular seat. But nowadays we have made it so different. There is, gender toilets different. There are, there's a neutral gender toilet, there's a female, there's a male toilet. But all of this essentially is a work of, I think, beyond visioning, also to breaking it down into implementation, because that's where the crux lies. And I think that, most organizations, when they think ESG, the first thing is environment, the next thing is D&I. So I think there is a need to look at it in the pipeline. If we're not looking at it across E, S, and G, and then very critically mapping how are we going to implement it, we will land up getting some incremental benefit. I'm not saying no. Will we be able to sustain that benefit? I don't think so. And hence, I think that when we both start looking at it very clearly beyond that, to look at saying, okay, we're already mapping it. How do we drive initiatives which are going to build into our future P&L? How are we going to really measure those future P&L initiatives and break it down into short-term, medium-term, long-term? I think then we will see actual movement, because ESG, and this is the data about, at least the World Economic Forum said 68% of those companies who invest in ESG outperform regular S&P 500 companies year on year. And this is largely because they have a vision towards building a sustainable company beyond themselves. And I think that is very, very crucial, even for family-led boards which are there presently. How do you build something which lasts beyond you, right? And I think that is the core of that can be unlocked a lot into the ESG that we have today, and the government has mandated us to do.
Very nice. So the government mandates, as you were saying, is woven into their state. For example, Impactree is in so many 10 states, I guess, no? 10 states or so. So
we're
it's
operating in 10
woven,
states across India and Saudi Arabia right now.
Oh, okay, great. So how does it work with the state's SDG, or you take into one small field and then you report back? How does it work?
So the SDG the SDG as such is just an indicative principle. There are, 18 plus 80 SDGs that are there presently. They are just prescriptive. And, having interacted very closely with the SDG board, which actually reviews how has the world moved on the SDG front year on year, there are only certain matrices that you can take. So again, that's where it comes into core matrix building, where companies can align to maybe 1 or 2 SDGs. The problem starts when companies think that, hey, I have 18 SDGs, maybe I'll align to 8. It is not physically possible to actually hit more than 2 SDGs at any point of time when you look at your core business and maybe your secondary business streams a little bit. Even not the SDG ecosystem, which was built for non-for-profits, and the United Nations, which brought it in, didn't envision that organizations would hit more than 2 or 3 maximum SDGs that they work with. So yes, as a part of the BRSR audits that we will do, we will align you into the SDG ecosystem, even the impact assessments that we routinely do with most corporate foundations and corporates across the country, we do track on the basis of SDG. And this does help a lot for them to report back to the government, but also in terms of fundraising abroad. And I think that's where the value of it can really be unlocked.
Very nice.
Because the
So I
government
think
is
that
also
Divya is
mandated.
waiting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
incidentally.
go ahead.
No, incidentally, when we were at the WEF, the minister had actually the mandate for BSR started from there, and I was there when that was happening. And the mandate has come in largely also because as the government, they've started realizing that if Indian companies don't report and the banks are not able to collect, even the government today cannot attract funds like what it used to before into the ecosystem. And that's why the reporting is presently being streamlined. And like CSR, they will give you a chance of streamlining it for the next 2-3 years where it will be compliance. And then after that, even we saw that, right? You had Swachh Bharat, you had Skill India. The government gave you initiatives for you to start aligning in the first 2 years. Today, it has reached a point of maturity where companies now are able to understand how to drive it within the ecosystem. And I'm sure BRSR is also heading in the same direction.
Wow. Interesting conversation. So, Sai, there is one question which has come from Captain Tapas. And he has an initiative called the Sustainability Practitioners. And what he's asking is any example where tech platform has been adopted in ESG decision making and performance. So if you can elaborate on that and,
So on the ESG front, our tech platforms are presently being adopted already. In Saudi, we have done deployments for it already. In India, we have just started working with certain listed companies to adopt it into their platforms. We are modifying it a bit to the Indian BRSR norms. And in terms of adoption of ESG tech before in the social sector, we have multiple applications. So a lot of social impact funds for years have been adopting ESG platforms and tech to monitor that into their existing social impact funds. So that is where we have already made deployments with a lot of social impact funds and happy to discuss it separately and then understand how we can take it forward.
Amazing. Wonderful. Yeah, I think very, very interesting conversation, Sai. And when I know that, you are also company secretary, Bharti is company secretary, and I'm also company secretary, it really feels proud that I think in spite of, being started our journeys with the, similar kind of profiles, I think with three, all of us are, in a very, very different and varied sector. I mean, you are into impact assessment and Bharti is into governance and risk compliance, and I'm into training of directors and creating platforms and all. So it really feels nice to kind of see all three into very, very different kind of ways of contributing to the society in whatever best way we can. I think that is something what I really have seen, that company secretaries have that different knack, and we all have extremely passionate ways of our own doing things. So one question which always keeps coming to my mind is, as startup entrepreneur or as director of a company wherein you are also registered yourself as startup, when the company starts getting funding and that time, how have you created your advisory board? Some thoughts on that. And also, how has been your journey of raising funds? So if you can, kind of share it a little bit, that will really help, because a lot of our viewers also are running their own startups or guiding the startups. So if you can throw some light on that, and then I think we can close.
Sure. So on the first question, sorry, your first question, second question was on the journey of fundraising, and the first one was again, Divya?
Was on the advisory board, if you have created your advisory board.
No, I have a very active advisory board. In fact, we have, multiple, at least over 8 or 9 advisors. We have a 6 or 7 member board members, also our active board of directors. I think a lot of startups make a mistake of saying, hey, I will raise money and then I will expand my advisory board. I don't think it works that way. And I have often aligned it with a lot of my mentors that I tell them that, if you have made a mistake, let me learn from it. I need not repeat that mistake. I think that's the fastest way to grow. So I think as a startup or as a, person that you're scaling, I've started up with actually expanding. Before you do fundraising, get an advisory board, because advisors are people who can actually guide you and make sure you have multiple skill sets. Like, for example, we have Dr. Ravindran who works on risks on our board. There is Sridhar, who advises us on strategy and scale. We also have Dr. Vanita, who comes from the social impact space. So always get also people who have complementary skills, right? We had Dr. Chauvin, who is from on the statistics background, and we also have Ramji, who is expanding. He's the specialist in MENA region. So we have people who are specialists in expanding our businesses both horizontally and vertically. And the most important thing of your advisory board, I also see this with startups a lot. They build an advisory board and then you just send them updates sometime and leave it. I don't think advisory boards work that way. You need to invest into the advisors as much as they advise in you. And by that, I definitely mean, monetary compensations for their time, which might be right, which you might be able to afford or not, but also getting them to be your biggest support, right? So don't be shy of making the same investments you would make in them that you make in your own business. I think you need to think of it as a transaction that way. So initially people will, out of the charity of the heart, support you. It's not sustainable for them or you. And that's why it has to be a mutual respect that comes into the relationship and you slowly build on that. I think that's the biggest I've learned. And in terms of my journey as on fundraising, fundraising is, I think it's a very interesting perspective. And this also, incidentally, someone recently told me, he told me that the minute you raise and you take money from me, then it's no more your company. So be very clear, you are the promoter, but it is not your company, right? So that sense of ownership divide also when you go into fundraise is the first step. You need to be open to taking people's decisions, especially investors and others who are on your board. You need to get into the habit of getting consensus, because I find a lot of startup founders saying, hey, I'll take the money and then it's okay. He's just an investor. It doesn't work that way, right? Once you decide you want an investor, you better be sure that you will have to report. You have to be okay even when things don't go wrong. Things go wrong in actually, being able to justify and find a way to mutually, which works to both of you. So I think that be cognizant of that is very important when you're going for an equity fundraise. If you're not that person, then you would rather go the debt route, right? Because then that is a large way where you can say, this is my company and it's my ownership and I will take this forward in the way I want it, which is very important when you make your first decision to fundraise. And beyond that, as you look at it in scale, of course, today there are multiple options. There is strategics, there is VCs. I think each of this have a different business model. So do your research on who, on really which model funds what kind of businesses. So you will be very sure that's very important, because we've realized manufacturing fund, scale funding is better on a strategic route, and e-commerce platform businesses work a lot better on the VC route. So you need to understand which segment you want to target and how you want to target it. I think that's the first two bases before you start raising money.
Amazing. So very, very insightful, interactions with you, Sai, and I'm sure it has a lot of takeaways, for all of us. And really look forward to work with you as MentorMyBoard and Impactree, which, the association definitely is, again, long time pending. We need to talk and, get it done. But then kudos to you and your, efforts, the way you have been driving this entire initiative. So absolutely wonderful. So if there is any question, Bharti, from your end, otherwise we'll...
No, I'm literally stunned because the Impactree and the achievements, So yeah, I'm sure equally a number of very stimulating thoughts have started, not only in our thoughts, but in others also. Because I have noted, after the pandemic, the world has become much more sensitive to the fact that we need to, get into ensuring that our environment stays, the ecosystem stays. We have a stake in it. If the insects and the animals and the plants and the trees die, humans are not very far behind. And, everybody has those videos of deer walking in the streets of Delhi and cheetah and all that, elephants walking in the, in Assam, Guwahati, in the main roads. So that, and dolphins coming into Mumbai harbor, right next to the marina, that jetty which was there. So people have become so sensitive, I feel, which is a hugely positive sign. So it's not just that the society and the the entities, the corporates have got to look into the ESG quotient. It's a fact that we need to understand that we can't afford to leave this world in such a shambles for the future generations. There won't be any world. So I'm so glad that you all are doing such a thing, and Impactree is a thing. Like I said, the name of that Impactree is also so impressive. So thank you so much. It was really wonderful talking to you. Thanks, Divya, for
Absolutely,
making this
Bharti.
happen.
Thanks, Divya.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank
Bharti.
you
It's
so
been a
much,
real pleasure.
Bharti. And
Absolutely.
thank
Yes.
you, Rajashri, for being here with us. And thank you,
Thank you.
Bharti. And look forward to
Sure.
all of you to see you in the next Boardroom Talk again next Friday. Thank you and bye.
Bye.
I think she left. Priyanka also is left. Or Priyanka is there and Divya is left.